In this screencast, we're going to talk about GCF and LCM word problems and how to tell the difference between the two. So in front of you, you should have a graphic organizer that you're going to fill out as we go through the video. The first part that we're going to take a look at is the GCF part and looking at what constitutes or what tells you that you are looking at finding the greatest common factor within a word problem. So the first thing that you want to look for in a word problem whenever you are working or looking for greatest common factor is potentially looking for that idea of sharing things equally. You may also see that idea of having the same amount. Again, that would mean that we are sharing things equally. You might also see the idea of just dividing things up. Again, you might see that word of equal or equally. And then some of our other keywords that we look for would include that greatest, largest. So again, sharing, looking for the same amount, dividing things up into equal parts, looking for that phrase of greatest or largest. You might also see that keyword each, how many items would go in each bag or each basket. So again, that goes along with greatest common factor because all of those words deal with the idea of division. So when we're sharing something or splitting things up, we're using that idea of division because we're splitting or sharing equally. The next piece that we're going to take a look at is the least common multiple piece. And with the least common multiple, we talked about this a little bit, is looking at cycles, so things that are repeating. So cycling or repeating. And kind of going along with that word repeating, you want to look for that repetition. So some of our phrases that deal with repetition might be the phrase every 3 days, every 5 days. We might see that the phrase again. When will the two foods be served together again? When will they go to work out and run again? Things like that. Other things might be the keyword least or smallest, because again, those words point out the word least in least common multiple. And the reason why we're looking at things cycling or repeating, that repetition, is because our numbers are getting bigger, because when we find multiples, we're using that idea of multiplication. So the real key here between greatest common factor and least common multiple is knowing whether or not you are dividing or multiplying. If you're dividing, you're using GCF, and if you are multiplying, you're using LCM or least common multiple. So make sure you have this filled in your table before we move on to the two examples. So we're going to go back. We're going to look again at sharing, same amount, dividing, looking at things equally, and then looking for those keywords of greatest, largest. We're looking at each piece. That would represent your greatest common factor because of division. LCM, you're looking at cycles, repeating, repetition, and you're looking for those key phrases of every, again, and then least and smallest to represent that idea of least common multiple because we are multiplying to get our answers. So if we do examples, and if you take a look at your paper, you should see this GCF example. It says Joan has 16 cookies and 20 juice boxes. She wants to share the cookies and juice boxes equally. What is the greatest amount of friends Joan can share with? So again, if we're highlighting any of our important pieces of information, we would highlight that idea of 16 cookies, 20 juice boxes, because that's important information no matter what type of problem we're looking or working with. Again, we see that keyword share. She wants to share the cookies and the juice equally. And then we see that phrase greatest amount. What's the greatest amount of friends Joan can share with? Again, all of these words are leading us to that idea of GCF, and again with the idea of division. So when you go ahead and solve this problem, you want to find the factors of 16 and 20. So go ahead and do that on your paper right now, and then you're going to hit play again once you're ready to check your answer. So go ahead and check your answers with mine. We're going to go ahead and circle the common factors. So I see 1, 2, and 4. So the greatest common factor would be 4. So that would tell me that Joan can share with 4 friends. Okay, and if you wanted to get more specific, you would say that each friend would get 4 cookies and they would each get 5 juice boxes. So hopefully they are hungry and thirsty. The next example is looking at LCM. So we're trying to compare the two and see the differences. So if we take a look at our LCM example, it says Nick runs every 3rd day and bikes every 5th day. So we see that phrase every. Once we see that phrase every, we know that we are cycling. So we're repeatedly doing the same action. If he does both activities today, when will he bike and run together again? So again, we see that word again, which tells us that we're using LCM because we are looking at multiples or multiplying. So we're going to go ahead and list the multiples of 3 and 5. So go ahead and do that and see if you can find the least common multiple between the numbers 3 and 5. Remember, we always list about 5 multiples for the first time through, and then we check our list to see if we have any in common. I see that I have a 15 in common with my 3 and my 5, so that means 15 would be my LCM. So if 15 is my LCM, that then also answers my question. If he does both activities today, when will he bike and run together again? So after 15 days, he will bike and run together again. So 15 would be your answer. So again, just to review, we're looking at that idea of the difference between LCM and GCF.